turn it over to Scott Heffernan from our Santa Clarita AJCC.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Scott Heffernan. I'm the business service representative here at the Santa Clarita Job Center. I'll go over the agenda and our next topics very quickly so we can get on to our presenters. First and foremost, we're going to be doing a quick little update on some COVID-19 resources, followed up by some local business and economic resources for different local community members and employers. Followed up by our first speaker, Jeffrey Forrest, the Vice President of Economic and Workforce Development at College of the Canyons. Followed up by John Milburn, the Director of Business Partnerships and Workforce Engagement over at College of the Canyons. They will both be giving some great information on some resources to upskill and to improve your work and to improve your business overall. Okay. So the purposes of the town halls that the county has set up is to empower our region and to combat and to stay together during this crisis. I know that we're just starting to get into the process of reopening slowly but surely. And while there are a lot of restrictions, this is to keep everyone safe, and then we can move forward and try to get back to somewhat of a semblance of normality. And our next purpose is going to be to talk about the updates for business resources. The most important one as of right now is going to be the newest COVID Regional Recovery Fund. It's a $3 million recovery fund that's going to be given out through grants. Applicants can apply through 6 different sections. They're going to be over the course of July 6th all the way through September 18th. The first one is going to end on July 10th, but then the next round is going to start on July 20th, so keep your eyes open for that. This fund was a collaborative effort by LA County, who contributed $2 million, as well as the city of LA. They contributed $1 million, as well as some additional philanthropic partners. The aim was to essentially assist nonprofits, small businesses, micro entrepreneurs that have been adversely affected by COVID-19 and who need a little bit of a helping hand to get back into business. All right, so the grants are going to be around $5,000 for micro entrepreneurs and up to $15,000 in grants for nonprofits and small businesses. This will all be sent out to all attendees. So you'll have these links and everything able to be clicked on so you can check them out for yourself on your own time. And if you're not already aware, LA County has set up the Disaster Help Center hotline to assist anyone from questions on unemployment into small businesses on the different kinds of grants and loans, rental assistance, anything that you might need or have questions about. Please feel free to call us. We have individuals from a number of different organizations such as LA County's libraries, the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, the America's Job Centers of California, a wide variety of different organizations that can help you based on what you need. So please give us a call. And then obviously the Department of Public Health is always here to help with questions on how to return safely back to work, what your process is going to be if you have someone that has a potential COVID-19 interaction, and when or how they can come back into the workforce. All right. So our next slide is going to be on some of our local community resources. We have quite a few different ones here in the Santa Clarita Valley. The first one being the SCV Economic Development Center, founded by Holly Schroeder, who is the chair of LA County's Workforce Development Board, amongst many other different organizations. They become a staple for our community. They've helped attract, retain, and expand a diversity of different businesses, especially those in key industry structures. They create strong relationships by providing business incentives and regular on-site visits, expediting permit processes, conducting labor market analyses, amongst many other things. You can also find similar business support and assistance in the Antelope Valley through Gavia and in the San Fernando Valley through the Economic Alliance. Additionally, it's always a great idea to sign up with your local Chamber of Commerce, as they are great at giving consistent updates on current events and how these might affect your business. In these uncertain times, they are another amazing resource to help keep your finger on the pulse of events and help stay ahead of the curve so that you don't get left behind or put in a situation where you don't know how to proceed. Additionally, please don't forget to sign up for your Small Business Administration. It's at no cost, and they help with business advising, low-cost training to existing and to new businesses. We also have a local chapter of the Small Business Development Center here at our local community college, College of the Canyons. The SBDC is the SBA's largest service program and provides high-quality business and economic development assistance, both to small businesses and to entrepreneurs. Okay, so for our first speaker, I'd like to hand it over to Jeffrey Forrest, our Vice President of Economic and Workforce Development at College of the Canyons, to talk about pre-apprenticeship models and apprenticeships and how they can be utilized to upskill your workforce and to improve your business. So please take it away.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, everyone. And if we could go to the next slide. So let's talk about pre-apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship. I know that there has been a lot of discussion that has taken place regarding this particular model of workforce development. Also, we know that the Board of Supervisors has issued a motion to for the county to develop, create, and launch a countywide apprenticeship model. And so there is a lot of interest in it, but it's something that we want to make sure that we understand, something that we can properly utilize so that it can accomplish the great goals it was intended to, and that is to provide employers with a pipeline of talent to meet the critical workforce needs and to offer upskilling resources to individuals who are looking for middle class, livable wage jobs, and to promote equity and income equality as well. So within the context of registered apprenticeship, there's a distinction between registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship. With registered apprenticeship, you have an employer that wishes to focus on training, in many cases, their incumbent workers or their existing workers. The employer also intends to hire graduates from a career technical educational or vocational educational program. That's registered apprenticeship. It's leading to that full-time opportunity, and it's going to take place within the context of being employer-driven. With a pre-apprenticeship, the student is in the K-12 system, and I would even go as far as to say the K-14 system if you add the community college. They are not currently employed in the apprentice occupation. What they're getting is a lot of the theoretical training, the academic and foundational training and knowledge that they need to be skillful in the actual position. And that's what happens primarily in a pre-apprenticeship. There may be, and in some cases are, some level of on-the-job or meaningful real-life experiences that complement that training. But for the most part, much of that pre-apprenticeship is going to be your in-class, again, training that's going to take place. Next slide. And so the Strong Workforce Apprenticeship Group, we want to spend much of our time on pre-apprenticeships, and I'll tell you why. Pre-apprenticeships are much easier to implement. They're much more efficient to operate, especially when you're just starting getting into apprenticeships. Pre-apprenticeships is what we strongly recommend. And the Strong Workforce Apprenticeship Group, which was founded by myself and Tracy D. Philippis, who is with Goodwill Southern California. She is the Sector Strategies Manager for Advanced Manufacturing. And this organization, we operate the following pre-apprenticeship programs. We are in cooperation with Aeroflex, the SEMI Institute for Career Education, and then College of the Canyons. We offer what's called the Center for Applied Competitive Technology, which specializes in CNC machining. Then there's East LA College, LAVC, or Los Angeles Valley College. Much like College of the Canyons, they offer also a CNC pre-apprenticeship. And then there's our Google IT certification for cybersecurity. We offer that in partnership with Jobs for the Future. It is the only cybersecurity pre-apprenticeship of its kind in the country. And so we operate these six programs. And you can go to the next slide, you're fine. And when we look at pre-apprenticeship, in particular, this model, we call it a consecutive model. Because when you're talking about apprenticeship, you're looking at two components primarily: on-the-job training and related technical instruction. In a pre-apprenticeship model, those two components happen consecutively. You have your related technical instruction that takes place first. Again, as I stated earlier, much of what you're going to get in terms of your knowledge and your instruction happens beforehand. And once you are hired by the employer, you're now working, and that employer chooses to host you as an apprentice, your on-the-job training begins. And when you complete the on-the-job training, along with the related technical instruction from the pre-apprenticeship, you then are issued a completion of apprenticeship from the agency, whether it's the Department of Labor or the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. You're issued a completion of apprenticeship for that specific occupation once you have completed the stated requirements that occupation calls for. And in many cases, many of the programs that are pre-apprenticeship programs are going to be accelerated programs. They generally take place within an 8 to 12 week period. They run roughly 250 to 300 hours of what we call class time or contact time, which is more than enough to satisfy many of the occupations, especially in the areas of advanced manufacturing and in logistics and allied health. It really does take care of the related technical instruction in those areas. And so I want to talk to those of you who are listening and you're thinking about how your organization, whether it's an AJCC or community-based organization, maybe you're an employer, in looking at how you might want to utilize this model, you want to focus on individuals who have an interest in that occupation and who have access to a program that offers that specific training. And it is that specific training that can be done in many cases at no cost to the employer or any other organization. Much of it is funded through support of the Los Angeles Workforce Development Board, through Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funding. And so a lot of this is going to, this benefit is going to happen without any real cost or out-of-pocket expense for employers. And it also really allows the AJCCs and other organizations to get involved in this by partnering with organizations that provide this training. Next slide. And so looking at pre-apprenticeship in terms of what's involved, it's designed in collaboration with what we call related apprenticeship programs. And these are industry-related apprenticeship programs. And what that means is this: it's a pre-apprenticeship program that actually leads to something that's in an industry sector, such as, again, advanced manufacturing, logistics, information technology, allied health, you name it. So there's a related apprenticeship programs. These are sponsored for industry-based sectors. The hands-on training that's going to be provided is meaningful. It's related to the job that the individual is going to do. Sometimes it takes place, sometimes it doesn't, but for the most part it should, especially if you're looking at machining, if you're looking at logistics, you definitely want to have that in play. Also, if you're going to be in allied health, such as the certified nursing assistant or the home health aide, you should have some degree of simulated experience with regards to some meaningful hands-on training as well. It's facilitated entry or articulation. Let me explain what that means. The pre-apprenticeship should be one that can be credited and linked to a registered apprenticeship. So let me give you a very specific example. The Center for Applied Competitive Technologies that's offered by College of the Canyons, it offers training for CNC machinists. That particular pre-apprenticeship is linked to a registered apprenticeship occupation called the Machine Operator 1. And that Machine Operator 1, we will credit the training that they have received from either LAVC or from the Career Institute as well, SEMI Institute for Career Education. Those organizations, they can have their training credited towards completing the related technical instruction for the registered apprenticeship once that individual is hired by an employer. And also within the pre-apprenticeship, there's access to appropriate supportive services. This is where the AJCC really comes in. The wraparound services that individuals are going to need in order to attend the training and be able to complete and persist through the training, they may need healthcare issues. There may be healthcare issues that are in play. There may be needs for transportation, needs for daycare, and other particular needs that are unique to particular individuals who we're trying to serve. And I believe that the AJCCs within LA County can play a critical role in doing those wraparound services to ensure that the individual who is taking these courses, going through this pre-apprenticeship, is again going to be allowed to do so until they're able to complete all the requirements. And I think that's, again, a major, major role, a vital role that all the AJCCs can play in making that happen. And through this pre-apprenticeship to registered apprenticeship relationship, sorry about all those words there, you have sustainability. It's all about partnerships. It's all about partnerships between community colleges and learning institutions. It's a partnership with Goodwill Southern California, a great workforce intermediary, a leading intermediary here in Southern California. It's a partnership with employers. It's a partnership with the Los Angeles Workforce Development Boards. All of these entities working together can make apprenticeship happen and can create the kind of models that are going to do two things. One, benefit our underserved populations who may be employment challenged, who needs to upskill, who are seeking livable wage careers. And it's also going to benefit the employers who are constantly looking for qualified, skilled individuals for their workforce needs. Next slide. And so here's some resources that we have available that you can utilize as well to continue exploring information on apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship. We have our resource guide on our website, our pre-apprenticeship toolkit as well. These are free resources. I want to make sure you understand that. They're available at no charge to you. There's the Division of Apprenticeship Standards that's available. There's their website, United States Department of Labor, and their efforts in apprenticeship, the California Apprenticeship Initiative Community of Practice, again, another statewide organization that's bringing together all those who are currently doing apprenticeship. And then there's the analysis of Assembly Bill 235, which actually created non-traditional, non-union apprenticeship. And so that particular piece of legislation is something you would want to consider reading through as well in terms of understanding. And it also speaks, of course, of creating pre-apprenticeship as well. So you definitely want to avail yourself of these resources if you're looking to learn more about this particular workforce model. Next slide. And if you need to contact us, Tracy DeFilippis, who is Sector Strategies Manager with Goodwill Southern California. She's also the co-founder of SWAG, along with myself. We are partners. College of the Canyons is a partner with Goodwill Southern California. Feel free to contact either of us, and we'll be happy to assist you in any way we can and provide whatever answers or materials or information we can to help you in your efforts to look into creating and implementing an apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship program within your particular service area. And I believe that's it for me. So thank you so much. And I look forward to answering any questions you may have later on.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff.
Sure.
Our next presenter is going to be the amazing Mr. John Milburn, who also works at the College of the Canyons, specifically at ETI. And today he's going to be going over what an employment training panel is and how that can also assist you with your current incumbent workers and improve your workforce in that capacity as well. So John, please take it away.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for that wonderful adjective, amazing, describing me. I appreciate that. I am the Executive Director of the Employee Training Institute at College of the Canyons. Very happy to be here with you today to explain a little bit about the Employment Training Panel funding and the Rapid Reemployment and Retraining Pilot, say that 5 times fast, that the Employment Training Panel, referred to as ETP, has launched recently to help assist employers in California in rehiring and bringing people back on. It's a very specific program. So I'd like to share a few details about that. First, I'll share a little bit about the Employee Training Institute at College of the Canyons. So if you would, next slide, thank you. At the Employee Training Institute, we specialize in offering customized training solutions for Santa Clarita Valley businesses and employers in our larger regional area as well. We specialize in manufacturing skills. As you can see, there are 5 broad categories. Our instructors are subject matter experts in their respective fields, and they have both teaching and training experience as well as having done the job that they're teaching and training about. And we try to only work with the best trainers and instructors that we can find in the industry. And the next one, Elizabeth, please. And we many times utilize classrooms at College of the Canyons at both of our campuses Obviously not during the COVID situation that we find ourselves in now, but typically we do, as well as we do on-site at local companies and work with their employees to help train teams in several of the areas I mentioned up above: leadership, continuous improvement, computer skills, etc. We are, just a side note, we are a part of the college that pays for ourselves. There's no tax dollars used to pay for my salary or any of my teams or any of my instructors. We earn that just like a regular business, although we are part of the college as a whole. So I just thought I'd mention that. The Employee Training Institute has successfully brought more than $7 million in employment training panel funds to the Santa Clarita Valley employers over the years, and we're pretty much experts at administering this funding. Go ahead, Elizabeth. You will. Just a couple pictures there. I thought the one where everybody in the bunny suits were being trained to work in a clean room at Boston Scientific or Advanced Bionics or places like that. I thought, that picture was particularly appropriate. Now this is something that we have done over the years in specialized training. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here's a few of the businesses that have taken advantage of the employment training panel funds over the years. There's many, many more, but just to give you a quick sampling of some of the companies that utilize this funding to upskill and train their workforce. So the employment training panel is a division of the state of California that is designed to try to help California employers remain competitive here in California and stay in California. Particularly interested in manufacturers and others that might be, wooed away by another state or possibly another country to manufacture their goods in that country. And this funding is to try to get them to keep the dollars here in California. It is a reimbursement program. It's not a grant. It's reimbursed for successful programs that are by eligible companies and eligible training programs. And it is funded through a tax on certain employers. This is called the employment training tax. It is paid by certain for-profit California employers, and it really targets to support those companies, as I mentioned earlier, that are threatened by out-of-state competition or who compete in the global economy. And lastly, nonprofit organizations and public institutions such as College of the Canyons and others are not eligible for this funding simply because they do not pay that tax. And that's just a note I like to make because many funding sources are generally available to all, but in this case, this is very specific funding that's available only to those employers that pay into the fund. The Employment Training Panel, or ETP, prioritizes its funding for small businesses, and it has a priority industry sector, which includes manufacturing, as you can see there, healthcare, biotech, nursing, construction, advanced technology, and others. And they also support clean technology. They have funding that is designed specifically to support transitioning to alternative fuel vehicles and things like that. And again, the Employment Training Panel is not our general fund money. It's not our regular tax dollars here in California. It's funded strictly by those companies that a very small percentage of their payroll tax is set aside to fund these companies.
Anything that I might have touched.
Go ahead, Elizabeth. So the Employment Training Panel, just a little note here, has over the years, since 1982 when it was founded, has reimbursed employers $1.5 billion. So this tax money that's set aside in the fund is then given back to the employers to reimburse the cost of training. And at College of the Canyons, we administer these funds. As I mentioned earlier, we've administered over $7 million of that money over the years to Santa Clarita Valley employers. So the other note here is that the return on investment has been calculated that for every dollar of ETP funds, we have $4 benefits to the economy. And this is in employees getting upskilled, getting promotions, earning more, companies doing better, their bottom line doing better because they didn't have to shoulder the entire training cost. We're able to pay a lot of that with these funds. And so ultimately you see a 1 to 4, 4 times the results back, which we're very proud of. So talking about this specific program that's offered by the Employment Training Panel, referred to as the COVID Rapid Reemployment and Retraining Pilot, or the COVID Pilot. It was first launched in March, right at the time of COVID hit us all, but it has been extended. It was set to expire in July, but it has been extended through December 31st, 2020. So that's one of the reasons I'm talking about it now. The purpose of this funding is to rapidly support employers and workers in healthcare and food supply chain. So here again is where I'm saying sometimes the Employment Training Panel gets very specific in who they're able to help. In this case, they're targeting the healthcare industry, private sector, and food supply chain group, which could include even grocery stores, which have typically not been eligible. So this is designed for those companies that are able to hire back people that need to train these newly hired employees, or maybe they're bringing back some folks they laid off. And the COVID pilot, the contract cap, or the most you can get, is $200,000 per contract, as I have listed there. The trainees must be new hires, or the recall of laid off workers is allowed with some justification, but they're really looking, they're hoping that a company is doing job creation, which means creating new jobs. But in this instance, if a company has laid off some folks and they're bringing them back on, and they're part of this healthcare or food supply chain industry sector, then they can be eligible for this money. There is a wage requirement with every Employment Training Panel contract. In this case, they are requiring that the new hires must be paid a minimum of $17.50 per hour, with the possibility of including up to $2.50 in health benefits paid for by the company. So could technically be at $15 an hour with $2.50 in health benefits would be eligible. We have advocated over and over again that ETP consider lowering those minimum wage requirements a little bit, but their mission is to support higher paying jobs in California. So that's one reason that they set these minimum wage requirements. And for this project, it is $17.50 per hour. All that's required is a company in, like I said, mentioned in healthcare or food supply chain that is a private sector company that we can determine pays into the fund. All that's required on the new hire is 4 hours of training. Typically, we're looking for more training, but in this case, they're trying to make it easy for these companies and not be a burden. If the company was to deliver 4 hours of COVID-related safety training for new hires, that would be ideal. And then the reimbursement, they'd be eligible for the reimbursement for each one of those employees. And as you can see there, that reimbursement rate is $2,000 per eligible new hire, which is quite substantial for an ETP contract. We haven't seen this before, at least in the, almost 20 years that I've been doing this. That amounts to $500 an hour reimbursement for 4 hours of training, $2,000 for a new hire. So it's quite, it's designed to really try to help the companies and support companies that are hiring now in this time when we're seeing just primarily layoffs. Go ahead, Elizabeth. So there's a requirement in every ETP agreement that the employees stay with the company after the training. In this case, only 4 hours of training, but then they're looking for a 90-day minimum that the employee is asked to stay with the company. Many companies complain, hey, we train our employees and then they end up taking another job, for a couple, 25 cents more an hour somewhere, or a couple bucks an hour. And in this case, with ETP funding, there is this requirement that the employees stay with the company, and that is to try to help the companies retain their employees after training. As you can see there too, it's just a minimum of 20 hours a week part-time. It's typically full-time, but they've lowered that. As I mentioned earlier, the training curriculum for that 4 hours of mandatory training would ideally be COVID-related safety training, but any and all course content will be accepted. So if a company has a 4-hour training that they typically give to folks coming on board, that probably would be eligible for this. There is a substantial amount of record keeping and administration involved with an ETP contract. This is where at the Employee Training Institute at College of the Canyons, we're experts in this. And so we would want to administer this contract, and the ETP dictates that 13% of the total amount could be, or would be allowed for administration. So in this case, it amounts to $260 per new hire. So that's, that's 13% of the $2,000. And this is for online data entry, record keeping, compliance guidance, invoicing, and other related contract administration responsibilities. And there are quite a few, actually, to be honest with you. Okay, next slide. So here's an example. If we were to have 100 new hires, it could be from more than one company. But 100 new hires times $2,000 each is, of course, there's your $200,000 maximum for the contract. The $2,000 reimbursement that we could invoice for minus the 13% administration fee, which is $260, means a net of $1,740 per new hire to the company. $200,000 contract would result in $26,000 administration fees on those 100 new hires. And so that results in $174,000 going to local companies, assuming the companies provide the 4-hour training. And don't contract that out because there would be some costs if they did, but if they can do that internally, then they can keep that full amount. So we're currently trying to find companies that meet these criteria and that are hiring and could take advantage of this funding to help support them bringing on new hires at this time during this COVID emergency that we're experiencing. So this, again, is just a little bit of the technical data that you see from the employment training panel, the kinds of things that we deal with. These are the referred to as the NAICS code, which is the National Industry Classification System. And you can see there, they're listing healthcare, pharmacies, medical and pharmaceutical manufacturing. We have some of that here in Santa Cruz Valley. Measuring device manufacturing, we have those folks. Medical equipment manufacturing, I mentioned a couple earlier, even Boston Scientific, Advanced Bionics, and others. Testing laboratories like Quest Diagnostics and others. Even agriculture, because that's part of the food supply chain. I know we don't have a lot of agriculture companies here, but we have a few. Food manufacturing, beverage manufacturing, those last ones there are all part of that food supply chain. They even listed soap and toilet paper manufacturing, I suppose, because of the situation we found ourselves in early in the pandemic. With the toilet paper shortage. And there is the last one there, food and beverage, i.e. grocery stores. That's where I mentioned grocery stores may be eligible for this as well if they're hiring folks, bringing on folks and they meet the other criteria. So this is just to give a snapshot of some of the industry sectors that are potentially eligible for this program. The way it works is we actually submit information about the company. It's referred to as their California Employer Activity Number, and that determines eligibility for us within minutes once we can submit that number, and then we can move forward with the company that was interested in this program. And I think that is all I have. Yes, so we can take some questions on this, and turn it back over to you, Scott.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you both, John and Jeff, for taking the time to give us this really valuable information. I know that a lot of employers are going to find this very helpful, and hopefully we can continue to work together. It's always a pleasure and a privilege when us at Goodwill Southern California and at LA County's job centers have the opportunity to work with you and your organizations. Hopefully we can still continue to do so going forward. So next up, we are going to move to our Q&A section. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up to anyone who would like to type their questions in the chat. If no one has any questions, I do have a few as well that I will be asking the presenters. So please go on ahead and type in your questions. I guess I can start off with one that I'm going to have for Jeff specifically. What does a business need to come prepared with when they would approach SWAG regarding setting up a pre-apprenticeship or trying to get some sort of apprenticeship program going?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, they need to know which occupation it is that they wish to have apprenticed and that they're going to be hosting. That's the number one thing that they probably need to know most of. And generally that occupation is going to be related to their needs. So if there is there's a machine shop that's in the area, it's probably going to be a machinist, a quality inspector, or a tool programmer. So they need to know the specific occupation that they're looking for. They also need to know what level of commitment is going to be required of, well, we will provide that information. What they need to also come with is a desire to not only upskill the employee and make sure that they have better skills, but also mentor that individual regarding how to become a better employee as well. So that includes not just simply saying, here's a job, learn these things. It's also, you're a part of this company. We're investing in you for a long-term career, and we want to make sure that you are a part of this company. They need to do what we call those non-quantitative things, those soft skills types of things, to make sure that that individual who's being apprenticed is welcome. So the employer needs to come with a program that does that, that's outside of the apprenticeship. It's their own efforts to build employee loyalty. They should have that ready. And then they should also come with some degree of administrative commitment. That if they're to take on an apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship, they need to have someone that they can assign that we can work with and call and contact, so that we can ensure that the administering of the apprenticeship and the tracking of progress is taking place. And so those are three things that they definitely need to have available.
Excellent, thank you. John, I'm assuming that there's going to be very similar requirements for a company to come to approach ETI, but do you have any additional things that you would like to add to that as far as things they would need to bring to the table?
Yes, I think that's a great question, because as I mentioned, ETP funding is pretty specific. A company has to have paid into the fund, which they may not even be aware they're paying into the fund, to be quite honest, in order to be eligible for the funding to come back and you know, the $2,000 per new hire, or even the regular ETP funding to pay for training. So what we do is we work with individual companies to ask them for that California employer number, which is similar to your federal employment number, but it's a different one that was assigned to each company when they were formed here in California. And then once we determine their eligibility, we take it from there. We will do everything to assist the company to make sure they get reimbursed. Some of those parameters are, again, typically a private sector or for-profit company, and also typically has to face some sort of out-of-state competition, although these days that's really hard to say that any of us don't face out-of-state competition. It's a global market, and it's very common that companies are facing out-of-state competition. So we advocate for the companies in our valley to be eligible for this. If ETP was to deny or hesitate and say, well, we're not sure that they're eligible, then we do the research necessary and do everything we can to convince them that the company is eligible. And we've done that a lot, as a matter of fact, and ETP, once they dug a little deeper, realized, oh yes, they are eligible. So it's really a kind of a one-on-one process, Scott, that works best, where if a company's interested, they contact me and my team, and we get to work to find out if they're eligible. Once we get their eligibility determined and get their application in, the rest is pretty much on us. We'll take care of it. One thing I should mention is I've already turned in an application for this $200,000 contract, and I put it in as a pre-application, which means it allows me some time to get the word out and see if there are some companies that are eligible and would like to participate in this because they're hiring. And we want to make sure we get them this money if at all possible. This is, in a way, it's money sitting there that if we don't take advantage of it, we're missing out. So we do work one-on-one a lot of times to determine eligibility and get everything, set up for the company. That's really the best process to work on this. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. It looks like we had a couple questions in the chat, but I believe Valerie's question was answered, as well as the ones from Lisa Michelle. I did get one question sent to me separately. I know it's not specifically for ETP, but it was regarding the incumbent worker program. John, I don't know if you might be able to speak on this a little bit, but they mentioned that there was a 20% pay increase requirement, and they wanted to know if there was some sort of way to negotiate that as far as funding goes from the company's end.
And okay, so that you mean in the, are you talking about the WIOA program?
Yes, the incumbent worker one.
The incumbent worker one. You know, I'm not exactly sure what the answer is to that. The requirements to increase pay are common in these types of agreements where they're trying to support companies to pay more in California when being recipients of this funding. And so I think that that's really what they're trying to get at there. I don't know if someone else has a little more information on that, because I don't feel like I answered it very well. But
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that
thank
one.
you.
Scott, sure.
Mhm.
And John handles the ETP side of funding. I work along the WIOA side of funding, and both of them are such big programs. You know, it's hard for us to be experts in everything. So with regards to WIOA, this is a new development for the LA WIBs, and that's being administered through AJCCs, and this is a good thing. So regarding whether or not that can be negotiated, here's the thing. Much of WIOA is going to be done through legislation at the federal level and legislation at the county level. That's how WIOA works. And so if it is written into the code of operations for how the LA WIB administers WIOA, then that is a non-negotiable. Now, one of the things employers need to understand is this: they're getting an incredible incentive to do this kind of increase, if you will. They're going to get upwards of half the salary for the first 600 hours, I believe, for incumbent workers, even more in some cases if the incumbent worker meets certain underserved criteria, if you will, upwards of 75% of their salary. And so that's why a part of that is being considered. And so within the context of that, the employer has to really price out whether or not that value is worth it to them, and if whether or not it's affordable to them in terms of that kind of an increase. But also, this is a new program. And because of that, this program may not be finished in terms of what is stated. So it may be 20% for now, but if it's not providing the incentive to employers, they may reduce it to 15% or 10%. And so with that said, it's really going to be a matter of talking with your local LA WIB representative to see if there is some wiggle room in there. But generally, this is a hard and fast rule, and 20% is somewhat of a significant increase, especially in the age of COVID, to consider. And I think if that rule was made prior to COVID, the WIB may go back and look at that anyway. And so I would say to that employer who's asking that question, or anyone, don't give up. If you need someone to talk to the WIB, I can talk to the WIB on your behalf, or maybe someone else, and we could look at that 20%, because that may have been a pre-COVID stipulation, which may not be as realistic for now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, both of you.
Sure.
Lisa had an additional question regarding incumbent workers. What if an employee lays the groundwork for a pipeline to higher wage employers, especially for a company that doesn't have a lot of upward mobility?
So let me make sure I interpret the question right. What if we're running this WIOA incentive program, these apprenticeship programs, and there's not a significant amount of career advancement that's available with that particular employer? That's something that needs to be vetted by the AJCC, by College of the Canyons, by SWAG. There should be some degree of advancement with a company. And if they're not able to offer that advancement, they're probably not a good candidate for apprenticeship. They're not a good candidate for ETP either, because the goal is long-term career advancement. It's not simply being able to get free funding so that you can train your employees and keep them at the same level. That would be completely counterintuitive to the purpose and mission of both ETP and to WIOA. And so any company that does not have in place a career path that offers an incentive for an employee to stay long-term, 5, 7 to 10 years, I don't think that they would be a good candidate for WIOA or ETP funding. Right,
and I want to just add to what you said, Jeff. That's absolutely true, and very well said. The idea is that these funding sources are looking to support companies that are providing that pathway, that career pathway, that upward mobility for their employees, not just keeping them at minimum wage or that kind of thing, so to speak. So, and I think to Lisa's question, if an employer was laying the groundwork for that upward mobility for higher wages, that would be something we could get behind and we could advocate for with these funders. And again, I think as with ETP, it's probably going to be true with the new incumbent worker funding through the Workforce Development Board, that we can take individual cases and advocate for those companies, because sometimes the nuances are important and they're hard to get across in the application. So that's where we get on the phone, we get involved, and we start talking to the groups and funding groups and talk with them, and we have relationships established to help companies find that pathway. But the company does have to be serious about providing higher wage jobs for folks in the future, and chances for people to move up, even if they need to move laterally and then move up. Those are all good options, but there does need to be career pathway available for these employees in order to be eligible for this funding.
Perfect, thank you. And I think I know the particular company that Lisa is referring to, because she did mention if the employer had set up some sort of pipeline to, basically train and upskill these employees and have an upward trajectory of being a pipeline to other companies within the community. So they would still be getting the upskilling, still be getting the training, and then improving their skill and their wage set, but it would be then transitioned to another company. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that might be something that will require a further meeting and conversation on if that's a possibility. That might require some additional conversations with the county and with both of you gentlemen as well.
I would say I'm very familiar with the company that Lisa's referring to. And we do agree that that company, because of the nature of the work that they're doing, would be a quality candidate, because they actually do incentivize, encourage their employees to go out and get better jobs, stronger opportunities if they're not able to apply them. And so from that standpoint, that's a whole different situation. I was answering the question from the context of the company not providing any type of growth whatsoever and not applying or providing any type of opportunity for that individual to grow by pursuing careers elsewhere. But if the company sees itself as a training ground, a proving ground for individuals who are formerly incarcerated or those who have trouble securing employment to gain a strong employment history and record and solid skills, and then they try to then move them to other companies where they can make more money, I think that company is a great partner, and we should definitely make sure that they're supported. And so that's kind of a unique situation, but it's one that we would support.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you both very much.
Sure.
Do we have any other follow-up questions from the attendees before? I think we should be pretty close to finishing up for the day as far as Q&A goes. All right, well, we'll monitor the chat. Lizzie, if you could move on to the next slide for me, please. So once again, we will be sending out this recording as well as the slideshow. This is just going to be your local listings of the America's Job Centers of California. For ones closest to you, you can use the link right here, Career One Stop. And then on the next slide as well, Lizzie, if you could swap it over. These are going to be your local business services contacts for the Antelope Valley, for the San Fernando Valley, and then myself for the Santa Clarita Valley. We can definitely put you in contact with any of the local business partnerships or with Jeffrey and with John if you needed to speak with them further. So please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to connect you with whoever you need help with and help you ourselves if you do require that, as Jeffrey mentioned, the wraparound funding, supportive services for things that you need while you go through some kind of a training. Those are definitely things that are provided through the WIOA funding, and we can absolutely provide that at the America's Job Centers. So unless anyone has anything further, I think, Andre, we are going to be good for the day. But thank you everyone so much for attending. Once again, John, Jeff, amazing to work with you as always. Thank you so much for the information. And I think we'll close this one out for the day.
Yes.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for attending. Feel free to reach out to us anytime.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks. That concludes our
All right.
presentation for today. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful day.